let's call the meeting to order at 11:33. And if there's anybody here for public comment, please do so now. Hearing none, we'll move ahead, I guess, to the approval of the minutes of the April 7th and April 21st meeting.
I'll make the motion to approve those minutes.
Wait, I think we have a question on the one for April the 21st in that new business mailing ballots. It says in there about the county, and does the county pay for postage? And I believe it's saying the next line, after discussion was decided the county would not pay for return postage on application and would pay for return postage on ballot. I don't think that's correct, is it?
What do we remember as per the board's wishes of that meeting?
No, I don't think we had. Yeah, I don't think we agreed to that.
No, we didn't.
Okay, can we have a motion to correct the minutes indicating the proper action that was taken?
I'll make the motion to amend the minutes to reflect that we would not be paying for postage return.
I will second the motion. Do we have two motions on the floor, though, or are we amending the first one?
We're amending the first one.
Okay.
Okay. Properly moved and seconded to amend the minutes to indicate the correct action that was taken. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. My phone keeps tapping out on me here, so bear with me. All right. I guess we have under new business. New business and old business is kind of running together with polling places and poll workers. Judy, do you have an update as to the polling places and how you're making out?
I think we're making out fairly good. Looking at what I just sent everybody, we have at least 53 of our polling locations that are permitting us to use them. So I think we're in pretty good shape that way. I'll have to look at the different locations where we're not permitted to be to see what's surrounding them and where we can combine the different locations. Now, my poll workers, I'm still waiting to hear from. What I would like to do is see the locations that are available, where I have poll workers missing that we could hopefully combine the precincts, so to say, so that we could work with minimal poll workers in each one of those areas.
I would suggest we look at the number of polling places rather quickly and figure out what our minimum contingent needs to be. And I would not look at it as a minimum. I would look at it as if you think you need 3, I would go for 4, because you're going to need people that need breaks and they're going to need to take restroom breaks and eat. And so I would not work at a minimum if at all possible.
With the poll workers?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the number of poll workers is going to be indicated by the number of active polling places.
I will say the fact that we're now up at 50, did you say 53 locations?
That we're permitted to use, yes. And I still have a handful that I left messages at, but yes, we have 53 polling locations that we are permitted to use.
That's great news, because just 2 days ago it was 16, or it was 37, I think, in the mid 30s. So that's great work, Jody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing is going to be the geographic areas that they cover. Obviously the center region is going to be our biggest one right now. So we kind of have to look at what our needs are and how we can consolidate the precincts to fit into the geography. Right.
And honestly, the polling locations within the center region aren't really that bad. I think we'll have an easier time combining the precincts location-wise, it's just finding the workers to fill those vacancies. I think we have enough buildings. We just don't have enough people yet.
And it
All
also,
right, go ahead, Mark.
oh, I was just going to say, also, Jody, good job of keeping everything organized in the spreadsheet. It would appear that with the exception of Phillipsburg, where we've gone from 3 to 1, and Ferguson, where we might be losing about half, pretty much everywhere else looks like we have a decent geographic spread.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, but like Pine Glen and a few places like that, we have to have, I don't know how much, the mountaintop in some of the areas, maybe even Phillipsburg, we don't want them spread out too far.
Well, I also have like a few of my poll workers have said, if such and such a place is not available, can we look at this? So I am waiting to hear back from our main polling locations that if we're not permitted to use them, I have ideas of potentially where to go. So that, I guess I'm not as concerned about the polling locations as I am the workers. Now, in the email that I sent, I believe I had either 15 or close to 20 people that submitted online poll worker interest forms. I've confirmed with each of them that they are indeed interested in working on June 2nd under the current circumstances. They're all willing to go anywhere we ask of them. I've also sent out a blast email to my small pool of people that I use to plug in spots all across the county, asking them if they have not already been contacted from one of the judges of elections and they're interested in working to get back to me. And that's probably at least 20 individuals that got emailed this morning. And I have heard back from 2 of them already that they're interested in working. So I'm hoping that we can get a lot of these vacancies filled. And I know, Steve, you said you had like at least 6 workers, and that's not including Michelle, who we talked to.
Yeah, it's up to actually probably 8 or 10 now. So.
Okay.
One of the things
So
I
we're
wanted
heading in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Jody. One of the things I wanted to mention was I think we would want to get to a point, however, where, from my perspective, I don't think we're going to be able to have the personnel to run 70 or even 80 locations. So I think that we would want to get to the place where we identify a saturation level we're comfortable with, and whether that's 65 locations or 60 or 70, and then sort of lock it in at that point, because the more that we have locations so once we set that, we can then say, okay, these are the locations we're going to work with. We feel like we're comfortable saying that voters will only have to travel a certain distance, lock that in, and then start to fill them out. Just because my concern is that it would be almost a good, bad problem to have, where if we have 80 locations that say they can do it, I don't think we're going to have that. But it looks like we may have about high 60s or 70 that may say yes. We'd want to be mindful that I think we'd rather have 60 that are well staffed than 70 that there's a few gaps. That'd be my perspective on that. So I think at a certain point, Jody could lock it down and say, okay, we've got these locations, we're comfortable with it, and let's start to fill them in. So just food for thought on that angle, because we wouldn't want to have a polling location that's stretched thin.
I would agree, and I think, and again, if we think we need 3, we better have 4, because you're going to need somebody to do relief, because you're not going to be able to run full bore with 3 people from morning till night. So I would shoot for 4, particularly some of the bigger precincts that you're going to get some significant turnout. We've got to bank those up a little bit, and if you go from 88 to 60 precincts, you're definitely going to get higher traffic. There's just no doubt about that. Some of those precincts are going to be very busy.
So I agree with the other 2 commissioners that Jody's doing a good job, and in the near future, we're going to need to just lock the number down, and if it's around 70, it's around 70. But I think my fellow commissioners are forgetting that we actually need to staff 88 precincts. They might be at 70 physical locations, but we need to have actually enough staff to have a minimum of 3 people for 88 different precincts, don't we?
Yes.
So Mark, if I could jump in there in the guidance, and so this was just released on Tuesday to Jody and Joyce's point. They actually say this is the guidance that they sent out most recently, and if you have the document, it's section 3.3.6, and here's what it says. And this is just from 2 days ago. The department is exploring the most effective means by which consolidating polling places will allow fewer total and more flexible uses of poll workers during the primary. We are developing the details of specific guidance and will provide it to the counties this week. So I think they're going to say to us, you do not need to have a board for every precinct. So that's how I'm interpreting at this point, and that's good news, I think. The key thing would be we'd have to have separate poll books, separate numbered lists of voters, some separate DS200s, separate ballots. But the way that I'm seeing that is they're going to come out with guidance saying that you do not need a board for every. You're going to need a board for every location, but not every precinct. But again, if you're hearing something different, let me know.
No, I'm not. I'm just maybe a little less optimistic than you are on that particular topic.
But to Jody and Joyce,
Well, they need to give us some
you
guidance.
seeing that
It's a
differently?
month out, and we need to know here fairly quickly if that's the direction we need to go. Because to Mark's point, if we have 88 precincts and we need to staff 88 precincts, then that's a big game changer.
Well, if we had to staff like 88 precincts and we have like 70 locations, 88 different precincts, and we have 2 or 3 precincts in one building, I feel that we could essentially have like those 3 different precincts, 3 different boards with a minimum of like 3 people apiece. My only concern with that, like if we would only have like one board with 5 people, as you're speculating, Michael, that maybe have 3 poll books. When the voter comes in, they're going to have to know what precinct they're in so that we know what poll book to give them. I think it might be a little more confusing if one person has like 3 different poll books and one person has 3 different ballots, trying to keep all of that straight. Like in my head, I'm visualizing it. Like, for example, precincts 1, 2, and 3 in one location in Bellefonte, that we would have like 3 separate tables set up and or 3 different locations set up in that room, and each table or each precinct have 3 people or so. And if you find that one location has a line and the other one doesn't, someone from a different table could jump over and help. Now, maybe I'm not thinking that through. I guess I'm not as optimistic as Steve when it comes to the amount of people that are going to go and vote in person. I mean, with our number of registered voters, I can't tell you off the top of my head how many are eligible to vote, because we're taking that down to just the Democrats and Republicans. And in general, I think, I don't know the last presidential, if we had not even 30 or right around 30% turnout. Like, I just don't see that having a minimum number of poll workers is going to be that big of an issue. I don't think people will be standing in lines out the door like they do in November.
My general point was not necessarily that that our goal should be to, if we consolidate 3 precincts into one location, that our goal should be to just have one board that's kind of running around each table. My thinking would be that we would want to know if that's possible or not, because you may know from the data we're getting in from the mail-in ballot requests that there may be a precinct that we consolidate that actually is not going to have a lot of people coming out to vote on election day because there's been a high number of mail-in ballots that have been requested and returned. You can use that data to be able to say, okay, but there might be then a precinct where there hasn't been a lot of absentee ballots or mail-in ballots requested, where you'd say, okay, we're probably going to need more people to work that table at that location. So again, it's just kind of thinking through that. But again, once we get the guidance from the DOS this week, as they say, it'll be more information. But I think it's important for us to keep that present because it may turn out that we wouldn't need to have, a full board at each location. But again, we'll monitor it.
Yes, I agree with you 100% there. And then also, like some of our regions in the borough are more populated with the students, not just on campus, but the off-campus
Exactly.
housing. So some of our precincts will have very little turnout. So I'm hoping that they're the locations that we can combine with other precincts.
Yeah, taking those 5 precincts that are, very few. 19, I think, is one. Those 22 is one. 23 that could have.
29.
Yeah, 29, like super low turnout. Those being
Right.
consolidated in one room in the borough building, could be a potential. So anyway, I think there might be pockets where we could do that, but
Yes.
Well,
Yep.
you're correct, Mike, on all the precincts you named except for 23, which is my precinct. That's still 80 or 90% local residents. The others,
Okay.
at least half of the registered voters in those other precincts are students.
I withdraw my last
I know.
statement. Please have the record corrected. 23 is a fabulous precinct.
Well,
It's the mellow
the hub-
precinct.
the hub's going to give us a little bit of relief. I don't think we're going to need a giant contingent there on the second, but I think everything said we need to get those kind of get that formula figured out here fairly soon. And if the state gives us the indication next week of where we should go, that would be very helpful.
But I do think the math is, at this point, somewhat simple. I mean, 88 times 3 is pushing 270 people, and that doesn't leave us any extras for a few precincts we think might end up being fairly busy. Do we have any idea roughly at this point, Jody, how many people have committed to you?
I didn't really do the math on that. You're talking about my normal poll workers?
Right, amongst the normal poll workers.
Oh gosh. Well, typically I have 5
There are
per
some big gaps
board.
in
Yeah, in all honesty, I don't have a whole lot of gaps. Most of them are, let me look here. The State College
And
Borough, let me see, 16, 17, 18, 19, the majority of them are students. 23, 24, 26, 30, the majority of them are students. But in our more rural areas, I think we're good. I mean, I have a lot of my locations, I have full boards, 5 people.
Right. And Jody, just to clarify, in the spreadsheet that you sent out this morning, there's some green boxes that have a yes in it. Like, for example, Bellefonte 2 has yeses all across the for every worker. But then in Bellefonte 1 and 3, it's just a green box. Does that green box with no text, does that mean yes?
It means yes. Yeah. When I started this, I was just going yes and no's, and then I decided visually it would be so much easier to have green and red.
That's okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Well, I guess we need to get that poll worker contingent worked out so we know how aggressively we need to recruit people. It sounds like we already have, 12.5 people ready, or maybe 24 confirmed, so maybe even more than that. How many do you have, Jody, that you have confirmed that want to work?
I have at least 20, and that was just from the onlines. Now, I originally confirmed that under the governor's current orders that they are indeed interested in working. They are. Now I'm going back and confirming whether they're available or interested in a full day or just partial days. I'm really hoping they're full days. Some have already committed to full days, and then I informed them that as I learn more and what locations our need is in, then I'll be back in touch with them. But at least 20 that I have thus far. And then I have 3 individuals on top of those 20 that have worked in the past, and I want to utilize them as judges because they have worked as judges in the past. So I kind of have them on reserve to figure out where I need judges.
And is that counting the group that I gave you or not?
No, that does not count the 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 that you gave me.
Okay, so we have roughly 30
About
people
30.
that have volunteered. Okay.
Yes.
So given the fact that we have 2.5 dozen people, we have, you know, I think we're going to have enough holes. I guess how aggressively do you think we should continue to recruit?
I mean, it doesn't hurt. I mean, I wouldn't say you have to be like overly aggressive, but even if they submit paperwork or show an interest now, that is not something I'll get rid of. I'll have them for November. You know, regardless of whether we would use them now, I would, unless we have like an overabundance, I wouldn't turn anyone away. Even if they are just getting some experience under their belt for a half a day, I feel that's better than nothing. So the likelihood that we would use them is probably pretty great. I would rather have too many than not enough, but I wouldn't say you have to go knocking door to door to find people.
Well, let's just focus on the primary, because not all these people may be available in November. They're volunteering
Right.
over now, so let's stay focused on the task at hand, and we'll continue to recruit then. Probably where we should leave that. Going back to poll worker, the requirement, are there any special requirements that we need? They have to be registered voters. They have to be residents of Center County, correct?
Yes, and minimum age of 17.
Okay, so they're 17. All right. There's, I guess you'll do the screening on that part of it. How about the training end of it?
I don't know. I guess we're kind of limited on what we can do in person. I haven't even thought that far yet. I don't know whether Joyce has put any thought into it, but I haven't put much thought into that yet.
One of the things, go ahead,
Bring
Joyce.
them in, like 10, have like no more than 10, and go through a training with them and schedule a couple of them, whoever to appear, whether it's afternoon, evening, whatever.
I would make a suggestion. I mean, virtual training's nice, and I get that. But if we have 30 or 40 people recruited to do this, that we do it in groups of, 8. Put it
Fine.
a couple hours live so they can see the machine, see them operate, for the opening and
Correct.
closing and all that stuff.
I agree with you on that.
I appreciate that suggestion. I will be very strong in my position that we should not do that. Here's why. If we have one person in that group that is asymptomatic, they could be wearing their mask, whatever, but the last thing we'd want is for a number of poll workers who are gathering together to get COVID-19. If it comes down to where we have to mail them a VHS or a DVD, and they can pop it into their computer to find out, or DVD player to watch it, I think we should go to those lengths. And I'm willing to, videotape, help record, much like just on my phone or on my computer. We could even work with CNET potentially to do videoing, but I think we need to go to, we should not be bringing our poll workers together. I just am very strong on that point.
Well, we also, our manuals that we
one-on-one.
have are literally step by step of absolutely everything we need to do. So all of these poll workers that are interested, we could mail that out to them too. Like Tisha created the manuals, and they literally, insert key, turn key to the left. There's pictures showing them absolutely everything they need to do. So that's something that we could do ahead of time, as well as to send these out.
I think you'd be very surprised in the percentage of our poll workers who would be able to get on a computer or get on their smartphone and watch a training live, and be able to ask questions. And we can do it like you did before. You have 5 or however many trainings you did. The nice thing about this is you don't have to leave the office. You don't got to lug everything up to the correctional facility to do it. But I'm happy to help it with the audio video with that. But I think that you're going to be surprised with how many people can jump on their computer or smartphone and watch this live, and we can put together how they can log in and all that. But I think you're going to have a great percentage of them that are going to be willing to do that. And if we do the training in early May, we can, we would know who's done the training, and then we can work to get them the manual. Honestly, a DVD. CNET can produce a DVD and mail to them if they're not able to get access to a computer.
I'm in general agreement.
They has on their, they can click on Center County, and they're supposed to be, I haven't checked it, but they're to operate the current system that we have, and the company is providing that. So that would be an additional thing they could do.
I get what you're saying, Michael. I think, and the thing that gives me some confidence is the fact if you have three people that are looking at the same thing, chances are there'll be enough, hopefully enough collective knowledge to do the opening and closing. That's the main thing. And the other thing is, of course, if they run into any specific issues with any of the balloting during the day, and I think we can probably have enough people on tap to answer those questions. So
I'm in broad agreement with Commissioner Pipe. If at all possible, we need to figure out a way that we can do remote training for the new poll workers. In part due to infection concerns, in part due to the short timelines. Also, I think this might be a good blueprint for us for the November election. In case we end up in a worst case scenario there, we have the ability to train potentially dozens of people fairly quickly because it's already in the can, it's already been done.
I guess the other question is
with Joyce.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go. I was just going to say briefly, Commissioner Gershom. I think Joyce's point about the videos being available online for the training, we can use them, and we can also augment them with. I'd be happy to do help record some videos of them, do it live. And the nice thing is that once we do it live or once we record it, it can be viewed at any point, and then a Q&A session can be done as well. So I'd be happy to lead that effort, work with the elections office. But I would think that we would agree that right now that the focus is polling locations and recruitment, which Jody's working on. But maybe in the next week or two, when we get a more clear picture on that, we can. I'd be happy to we could take a night and just do a training and go from there. It wouldn't take too long to record it. They're pros with this, and we could go from there.
And perhaps we can do a frequently asked questions. I think the one big one I think we're going to get, of course, is is going to be the balloting during the day. Whether you're talking about the provisionals or when people have sent in their other ballot or done it by mail, they want to vote in person. We need to just do an FAQ for a variety of things we know that are coming on election day.
And one final point I'll say is. Go ahead, Jody, sorry.
That's okay. With the provisional ballots, we prefer that the poll workers call in. If there are any types of questions whatsoever, someone's not in the poll book, there's this note in their signature block. We prefer that they call us and we can walk them through that step as opposed to them just having notes of the frequently asked questions to take upon themselves, so that we can make sure that everything's being done properly and the voters aren't being disenfranchised because the poll worker is interpreting it one way when indeed it needs to be a different way. I'm not against sending out FAQs, but I know we prefer to have the poll workers call us with any types of questions whatsoever.
So you're going to be getting a lot of phone calls if that's what you want to do.
We do, well. That's what we do.
I think we will this time because the students are gone, and they are 99% of our provisional ballots.
Well, I think so. There are some FAQs that would be helpful. For example, what happens if somebody spoils a ballot and wants a new ballot? And I think one of the things that we could test drive would be if we do a few videos of the FAQ, some of the things that occur. You can walk them through physically in a video in 60 seconds what they should do. And of course, you can call us at any point if you have questions, but on election day, they could have that on their phone and they could look at it and play that video and say, oh, okay, this is what we do. So Yes, of course, we want them to call you, and we're never saying that they shouldn't, but there may be some gaps that we can fill. And you could even go through every step of how they open the precinct. Yeah, I'm a big DIYer when it comes to the house, and so I just pull up on YouTube. I'll put in, how to, how to clean this or how to clean that. It's somebody who's doing it right there, and so having that as an option for to do, just because we don't know what it's going to look like on election. I mean, hopefully June 2nd is a long way away, and things might look very, very different at that point. So it would just be another tool in the toolbox.
Right, and some of that too is also in our manual. But I have, like I said, I have no objections to having an FAQ list.
So again, I'd be more than happy to work with elections and at their schedule and their timing, do some videos, and we can take a look at it, see where it goes from there. But I think that'd be really important to do, and again, appreciating all the hard work that they're doing.
All right. So we'll work through all those issues. Jody's going to get us the polling locations, get the worker list, I guess, figured out. I guess the next question that we have left over from the last meeting is the wage scale for what we're going to be offering the folks that are working during the COVID election. Any thoughts?
I emailed Betsy on that matter, and I have not heard back from her. However, you want to keep in mind amounts that they would acquire over the year, not require a Social Security number from them, or require the controller to do a W-9 for them at the end of the year. And I don't know what
they
that
go over
maximum
600. It's 600 for a year.
Yeah.
Well, my thought was too, like, I think we should have like a separate line item, because if they're getting paid like double this time and then moving forward they're not getting the same amount, I think it'll like confuse them. So whatever their base rate is that they typically get for a normal election should show, and then maybe another line item that says COVID-19 or, whatever you want to call it, and then whatever the additional amount is, so that they can see, oh, I'm getting more because of this, not we got a raise and this is what we're getting every election.
Yeah, if you raise it now, you're going to be paying that the rest.
It would be very easy for us to put a COVID line on the paycheck. In other words, the base wage is this, and the COVID wage is something else. We could do it that way. That way, there isn't the confusion. I can appreciate that.
Okay.
Now, is this something that will be done behind the scenes, or it needs to be on our pay sheet? Because they're already in our supply boxes, which not a big deal, but we need to know if we need to change them or if the COVID bonus is kind of behind the scenes. Controllers, strictly.
We'll have to get back to you on that. I guess the question that we need answered today is, presuming that we can provide the COVID incentive, what that incentive might be. I know, Michael, you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean once Betsy gets back to us to see if we're allowed to do it per the elections code, that's one thing, but then the IRS thing is another thing. So basically, we need to keep it under $600 in order for them not to have to.
Between both elections per year.
Right. So essentially $300 for each election.
Right. Now, some people, their max off without the COVID pay. Hold on a second. I'm pulling my pay sheet. Okay.
I think, Michael,
what do the judge of elections earn?
The judge of elections is broken out in 4 voter number groups. There's 150 or less, which the judge would get 140 plus possibly transportation, depending upon who drives. And then there's some other random janitorial setup, yada, yada. The 151 to 300 is 150. 301 to 750 is 160. And if they would have more than 751 voters show up, you're at 170.
Okay, so you're at maximum, you're $170. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, with some potential increase if they do any of the additional jobs. So I'm going to say max 200 if they do a bunch of the other additional jobs for over 751 voters for a judge.
Would it be safe to assume if we put a $100 COVID incentive in there, that would keep everybody under the $300 threshold?
Potentially. Now, the other thing I forgot to add in is training. They get paid for training. So probably this time they won't if it's all at home, but in November, that would be a little bit more added in. And that's $20 for training plus mileage.
So from the perspective of, so is it where, because is it where we're concerned that there might be some more paperwork if they go over 600? Because I think in this special circumstance, we need to go above and beyond to, if it's 800, I mean, it is what it is, and we can just work out from there. And I think people are going to be willing to give their Social Security numbers if they're going to get more money. And if they don't want to, they can be, they can be at a different rate. But I know the controller would be willing to help us out with this. And
I think you would have to 1099 them then as subcontractors over 600.
Yeah.
so, Mark, what would that mean? Does that mean they have to pay taxes on that?
Yeah.
They would have to pay taxes on it. We wouldn't. They would have to
And
handle
as
all
of
of
right
the
now, they don't.
Okay.
The other thing you have to keep in mind, 3 of these people were elected. Now, this is what we were told in the past, that if you raise their pay during their term, you can't do it. You could raise somebody you appointed, but the ones who were elected, you would have to wait till their new term started. That would be a Betsy question. That was always preached to us before in the past. Whether that's changed or not, I don't know. Like an elected official, judge and the 2 inspectors.
I would suggest for the time being, monitor how many poll workers come through. It may not be an issue. We may be able to recruit without having to increase the pay. And we could always do a gift card. If we keep it under we could give everybody a gift card. I mean, it seems like at this point it would be something to get an answer from Betsy. And until she does that, we can just continue as we're going, and then once she gets us an answer, we can go from there. But that's a good point, Joyce, in terms of changing the pay mid-term, but we can maybe augment it in some other way.
Well, and here's just another thought on if they end up getting 1099, then you have to worry about how much of that bonus was really worth it, because now it's, they're being taxed on it, and is it going to affect their tax bracket, et cetera. So, I mean, that's one thing to keep in mind with that too.
Here's my suggestion. I think if we do the separate line item where we use the combat pay, in other words, as part of the incentive, if you are an elected poll worker or whatever, then you may or may not be able to receive that. But for the appointed ones and the incentive of getting people in the short term to come out and help out and learn kind of on the fly, I would suggest that we create that line item. And if you're telling me $170 is the base rate, I would suggest we start at at least a $75 or $100 COVID. That'll keep us under the $300 threshold, and we can move forward.
Well, I can also tell you, like, of the people that have committed or expressed interest, pay was not brought up to any of them whatsoever. So if they would get a bonus, then yay, but they're not doing it just because of the money that they're going to receive. So I don't know if that helps in your decision making at all, but no one has, agreed to work because we're giving them X amount of dollars on top of what they would already make. Like none of the poll workers or the volunteers, for lack of a better word, have agreed to work because of that. So I don't think at this particular moment, like we have to necessarily advertise, hey, you'll make X amount of dollars if you do this for us. But I do agree with all of you that I think it would be a nice little bonus to have on their check, just as an act of appreciation.
You could,
I'll put this a separate way. I want a $175 or $100 bonus included in this. I think if you want people to show up on election day and you don't want to wonder whether or not they're going to show up and whether they're going to do their training, you got to incentivize them. This is extraordinary circumstances we're under, and I think we need to incentivize them. So I don't know what everybody else's thought is, but I really do believe that if we can keep it under the $300 threshold and get this done. So we can include it under training. We can include it, the COVID thing is net, whatever. So.
Well, a question for Michael and Mark. Michael's suggestion of a gift card. Mark, if that money was put on, say, like a Visa, like the Visa gift cards that you can get, and so it wasn't necessarily on their paycheck, does that fall under the same category of over the 600 or no, because that could be considered a gift?
That would get very, very tricky.
Okay.
That's compensation.
Yeah.
No difference.
I would agree.
I think we've discussed it before or mentioned it. If we added in the absentee ballots for that precinct, which would jump them into their brackets, would be a pay increase for them, and they haven't touched them. We've had that asked a couple times.
But if we do that, you're going to have locations, like, for example, that have Elmcroft or something in that are going to have hundreds upon hundreds of absentee or mail-in ballots, and then you're going to have Curtin who doesn't have any. So if we would base the amount of bonus that they get off of that, I don't think that would be fair across the board.
I mean, in terms of the fairness of this, sometimes we can't make things as fair as we'd like. We don't want to cause too much more work for you all, but I agree with Commissioner Dersham that let's try to find a strategy that at a certain point in time we can say to the workers to ensure that they're coming, thank them for being there, that there's going to be this additional funds in there. So however we can work that, keep it under the threshold, do it in a way that it meets legal criteria, but let's try to work through that. Again, it's not a priority at this point from my standpoint. It's getting the poll workers, getting the locations, which you all are doing. But at a certain point, once we get an answer from Betsy, trying to figure out how we do it. But I do think it is important to do that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm in rough agreement with the other two commissioners. If there's some reasonable way we can get them an extra $70 to $100 COVID-19 bonus, that would be great.
All right, well, let's work on that. Let's press Betsy for an answer so we can move ahead with that conversation, because I think as we move forward to try to recruit poll workers, that's going to be a question that comes up, because you're asking them to expose themselves to a lot of people potentially in the course of a day, and I think there needs to be some compensation for that. And also, I don't think you want to give them a 1099, because if you do, I think you're entering into some liability with what happens if one of those poll workers gets sick. I just think it's probably best that we keep this under the $600 threshold, but at the same time incentivize people to come out and help us out.
I have a question on a side note, and I don't know, maybe Joyce got an answer and I just didn't hear it. The whole mask situation, like Joyce apparently had asked Krista, and Krista, she had to run it by you guys. Was there ever a definitive answer on, yes, the county can provide what we need? Because the state stuff is a limited percentage of our precincts. It's not going to cover every single precinct.
Yes, we got an answer on that, and Krista has already bagged them for us, and they're downstairs in the room.
Perfect.
Well,
the bigger question is go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think we're going to get a larger share. I think we're going to be able to cover every precinct. Here's why. So Allegheny County is requesting from the Department of State to go from the precincts that they have to 20%. They're doing an 80% reduction in their polling locations. That's the plan that they're putting forward. And I think you're going to see that from the other larger counties, especially Montco, especially Bucks, the ones where this is really bad. So I think the way that the Department of State is saying it is they're going to release, so some counties may get 100% of their polls and some may not, but they're going to spread it around. So I actually think that we're going to get a box or a protection kit for each one of our precincts, just because you already have some of these larger counties saying we need to consolidate. Again, we shouldn't bank on it, so it's good to have those masks there. But I think we're going to be good. And also, the surgical masks are better to use than the cloth masks we have. The surgical masks are more protective. So in addition, Margaret had reached out somebody reached out to Margaret about the potential of donating for our elections workers. And I don't want to steal Margaret's thunder, but she had to be on a call with Mount Nittany. But it's going to be protective shield masks or face masks that anybody in the elections office can get for free, and also our poll workers would get for free. And they're gonna donate them to us. So Margaret's going to reach out to you, Joyce, to get a better sense of that and how many we would need, but they would be able to donate them all for free. So I don't know if we're going to need the cloth masks for election workers at the polls, number one. Number two, we may need to use some of those cloth masks to give to voters as they're coming in, or to let them know that they can get them from us. Again, we'll wait and see, but that's my sense of where the DOS is going to be at.
The ones with the shields, they don't have to wear the mask with them.
No, they would. They still
would.
No, yes, they would wear both a mask and a shield. The mask would be for a respiratory, and then the shield would be to help them not touch their face. So if they're wearing something on their face, the thinking would be that they wouldn't be touching their face, which is what the face shield is good for, and also to protect their eyes from any sneezing or coughing.
Correct.
I think you'd find that most people would use the shield only in extreme circumstances, but it provides us with the comfort to know that if somebody does have that issue or that concern, that we do have them available.
Good.
Okay, so what other areas do we need to cover before we adjourn?
Just to let folks know, I'm going to be on a conference call tomorrow with Penn State regarding the use of the hub and for a polling location, and I'll be able to report back what they say after the call. It's going to be at 3 o'clock on Friday, and I can let everybody know what they say. I'm hopeful the fact that we're having a call would indicate that they have some questions. So Jody, if you're available at 3 o'clock tomorrow, it'd be great to be able to get you on that call as well.
Okay.
I can send you the information so you can join in by phone or video conference. But if we can explain to them that we're going to disinfect, we're going to take care of everything, I think they're going to be open to it. But we'll see.
Okay.
Other than that, I wanted to mention we got the email, all three of us and Joyce and everybody. We got the email about receiving the funds from the state. It looks like it's about $160,000 from the two pots. So we need it due back by not this Monday, but the Monday following on the 11th. So I would suggest that maybe on Tuesday or Thursday of next week, we would hold a meeting, Chairman Dersham, for the Elections Board to accept those funds after the solicitor and Joyce refuse it.
I would agree, and I think that $160,000 will go a long way to mitigate whatever extra expenses we have from poll worker wages, et cetera. Now, Michael, is that for the year, or is that just for the presidential primary election?
I would refer that to Joyce. Joyce, can that be used? Does that have an expiration date?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay, well, we could find that out, Steve.
We'll find
Yeah,
out.
if your thought, Steve, is that we use some and you keep some for November, I wholeheartedly agree.
Well, I'm assuming that we're not going to need 160,000. We probably will knock a portion of that out, but if we can roll that over into the general, because we're going to have these same issues, and they might not have the same amount of money. So if we can somehow make sure we can wrap that money up for the fall as well, that would be very helpful.
I know there was.
The funds for care must incur permissible costs in January 20th, 2020 and December 31, 2020. So it would cover all year.
Excellent.
Right,
That's
we'd
perfect.
also talk.
I think in the general election, I think we're going to have this is a good opening run, but we're going to have the same issue probably in November. So we're going to need those funds, and we're going to probably utilize them probably en masse in November rather than in June. So.
Now, we'd also talked about potentially giving more money to the polling places as well. Sounds like we may not need to do that this time, but maybe we might need to do that in November.
Well, I think for a couple of points, if we do have some polling places that are particularly sensitive, we do have the NBD sanitizer, and we have that fogger. We can go into the area after it's all said and done and probably clean up those areas pretty effectively. So, we can make sure that any polling locations that have any specific issues are addressed.
We discussed that the last time, that we could, if they agreed to use it, and they could professionally have it disinfected, and it would fall under this grant money, right, Mike?
Yeah, Steve, we could maybe we could have our staff do a few, but I think from a safety standpoint and from a professional standpoint, the liability would be on the, or just, the safety aspect would be under the professionals. I know Mammoth and some other companies in the area do it professionally and have been doing it. So even though we have the capability to do it ourselves, we may want to save that just for facilities that we utilize. For example, our election houses, the 2 election houses, maybe we do those ourselves, but any other facility, maybe we turn that over to the professionals and have them do it. But again, that's food for thought. We can cross that bridge in the future.
I mentioned that only because I think there's going to be certain locations that are probably going to have to be utilized maybe even the next day. And I don't know that Mammoth is going to be able to hit all the locations. So if we do have extenuating circumstances where somebody needs to use their facility the following day.
Well, it might even be having multiple. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that was that. We could, as long as we have the contracting capability of getting all the needs met, I don't have any problem with it. That's fine.
So my question would be then, are you going to do this for all the polling locations or just the ones that request it? Because of the ones I've heard back from thus far, there has only been one location, which is the Spring Township building, that specifically asked that question. And given our meeting on Tuesday, you kind of gave me, or so I interpreted, you giving me the liberty to tell them that we would compensate them to have it professionally done.
If you were following along earlier, Jody, I said the ones that have the concerns that
okay.
I don't think you can offer this to 70 different locations. We'll not be able to do that quick of a turnaround.
Okay, I was just making sure because I only had the one that has expressed any concern like that at all.
Well, and I think one of the things as well is if it's a room that if it's a room they have to use sooner rather than later, that'd be good to let us know because we could prioritize it. But there may be certain rooms where we can stagger this over the next few days or the days after the election. I think as we get closer to the election, I think more organizations the light bulb will go on to say, wait, who's going to be disinfecting that? What's that going to look like? So we may get more requests as we get closer to the election. So again, multiple firms may be needed, and again, we may, like you said, Steve, we might need our maintenance staff to go out there and do a few to help out. But again, a road to cross, and I'm sure the election workers are going to ask the same question: do I need to disinfect it? What do I need to do? Do I need to wipe it down? So again, we'll road to cross. But I would agree with Commissioner Dersham's suggestions that saying yes to the ones that bring it up, but not offering it to all.
And I think as Michael indicated, we're going to get a lot more questions and a lot more indications, but I don't think we're going to have the capacity, even if we contract with numerous firms, to disinfect 70 rooms in one day. That would be a real issue.
Oh, no, that wasn't my intention, as even with the poll workers. I have not offered up any more information as to bonuses or, hey, this is an incentive to let us use your polling location. It was just a question for my own reference.
Well, I would leave it that if you do have the question, that we will provide that service. I don't know that I'd broadcast it hither and thou, but that's how I would leave it.
I would say at whatever point it would work to if the election staff would want to reach out, and maybe Lee could help you in finding firms that would do it, but start to gather some information about what it would look like to do disinfecting. Maybe some firms can do a turnaround over 4 days or 3 days, but I think that would just be good to get, just because I think other counties are probably going to be starting to do this as well. And so if we can jump them, beat them to the punch, might be good to do. So whenever it works, but I think it would be good to get that information as well.
All right. Well, we'll get back to this next week and kind of ratchet that one down. Is there anything else to come before the board this afternoon?
If it's no, I did not have anything else.
I don't have anything else.
Michael? Mark? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, properly moved and second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're adjourned. If you run